show you now how to work the double crochet stitch. I'll show you the close-up of that here. The double crochet stitch is about twice as tall as the single crochet, which is probably the most basic of the crochet stitches. And the double crochet stitch tends to get used the most. It's going to create a fabric that's nice and drapey, so it's not going to be really stiff. And it's going to grow pretty quickly. If you're making a project with a double crochet, that you're going to get your scarf to add some length to it pretty quick. So the double crochet is probably the most often used crochet stitch. And it is pretty straightforward to work. So I'm going to show you how to work a double crochet. So in order to get started, you again, just like we learned with the single crochet on our last square of this sampler scarf, and I will put a link to the full pattern in the comment section. So all of this is written down in a pattern. But you are always, just like in the first row that we did, or the first block that we did with the single crochet, you're always, assuming that you are a right-handed crocheter, you are always going to be starting on the right side of your piece and working to the left. So you crochet the opposite way that you read a book. And we are going to begin the double crochet row by working a turning chain. And a turning chain is worked identically to every other way that you would create a chain stitch. So we are going to wrap the yarn around our hook one time, and we are going to pull that wrap through the loop that was already on our hook, and that created one chain stitch. Now we are going to, our pattern is telling us to, we are going to be making 3 chain stitches. These chain stitches are creating almost like a step stool to the top of the row that we are going to be creating. So the way that crochet fabric works, our crochet hook is always at the top of our row, and we're creating fabric underneath where our hook is. So when you first get started on a row, your hook is at the bottom. You can't make crochet fabric, crochet stitches up into the air. We need to build our little turning chain ladder to get up to the height of the row so that we're able to make our crochet stitches underneath our hook. So the pattern tells us to work a chain 3. We've worked our chain 3, and now we are going to be working a double crochet. Before we insert our hook, we are going to wrap the yarn one time around the hook. And I say wrap, you're not even going all the way around. You're kind of going up and over. The same direction that you would wrap your yarn when you were doing a chain, or that we wrapped when we were working the single crochet. You're always wrapping that yarn the same direction. And now we need to figure out where we are going to put our hook. You are never, no matter what crochet stitch you're working, you're never going to put your hook into the turning chains. So we just worked a chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're never going to be putting our hook back into any of those 3. That's our step ladder. We don't want to mess with that. That stays exactly where it is. With the double crochet, we also skip the very first actual stitch. So we skipped the chain 3, we skipped the 4th, and so we're going to be putting our hook into that 5th stitch away. And just like with the single crochet, we want to make sure, I think it looks like the letter V kind of on its side there, the letter V, the letter V, the letter V, all the way down. When we put our hook in, we want to make sure we are going under both legs of that letter V. So you have 2 strands of yarn on your hook there, and they're smushed right next to each other. So it almost looks like one strand of yarn, but there's 2 in there. You can see them separated apart there. And so we have the loop that we started with, we have the strand of yarn that we wrapped across our hook, and then we have the 2 legs of that V where we just put our hook in. And now we are going to lay the yarn across our hook and come under the first 2 strands, the 2 legs of that V where we just inserted our hook. And now we have 3 loops on our hook now. We are going to lay the yarn across again, and we're going to go under 2 strings. There's 3 on here, we're only going under 2 of them. So this one here, the one farthest away from the hook, is staying put. We're going to go under 2 strings, so now we have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to lay the yarn across one more time, and we're going to go under those 2 strings. And that's a double crochet. So you can see how our chain 3 almost it looks very similar to the double crochet. It's the same height. It looks similar. If you look super close, they are a little bit different. But this pattern, and pretty much any other crochet pattern that you're going to find, is going to tell you that that chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So when we get to the end of this row, our pattern is going to tell us we should have 15 double crochets. That is going to be including this. So you'll count this as if it were one double crochet. So I'm going to show you how to do one more of those stitches. We are only skipping things at the very beginning of the row. We're not going to skip it from here on out. So I put my first double crochet right here. My second double crochet is going to go right next door, immediately right there. So before I put my hook into my fabric, I'm going to lay my yarn across. I'm going to put my hook in. Again, make sure you're getting under both legs of that letter V. Lay the yarn across, come under 2 strings. Lay the yarn across, come under 2 strings. Lay the yarn across, come under the last 2 strings. And that is a double crochet. I'm going to go ahead and double crochet across to the end of this row, because there is one tricky thing that happens right at the end of a row of double crochet that I think is worth making sure to point out. And you will get to the point where it goes this smoothly and quickly. I have been crocheting since I was 8 years old, and I am now much older than 8 years old. So I've had a lot of years to get very comfortable with the crochet stitch. Don't feel frustrated if yours doesn't go quite this smoothly. You will get there eventually. As long as you're having fun, you're doing it right. I do kind of want to point out how I hold my working yarn. The working yarn is just the end that's connected to your ball of yarn. A lot of people will wrap this around their fingers different ways. For me personally, that does not feel comfortable, and so I don't do it. My working yarn goes between my 2 fingers and over the top of my pointer finger, and that is all I do in terms of tensioning my working yarn. However, it feels comfortable for you to hold your yarn. If that is to wrap it around every finger you've got 5 times, great. As long as that feels comfortable for you to work, that is the right way for you to do it. But if you can't get it to feel right doing that, then you do not have to, you don't have to put that yarn under tension in any fancy way at all. Again, I just loop it across just that one time, and it's not connected to anything else. So when you get to the very end of your row with double crochets, every one of those letter V's where you're putting your hook is laid out all nice and neat and tidy, and they all look exactly the same as each other, all the way to the end. And you just put your hook in every one exactly the same as the one before, until your very last stitch. The very last stitch that you do, you are actually going to be putting your hook into what was our 3rd chain from the previous row. So at the beginning of the row, we do a chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then at the end of the row, we are going to be putting our hook into that 3rd chain that we did the last time we did this row. And this does not look at all like any of the other letter V's, and it's kind of tight to try to get your hook in there. I always call this my swearing stitch. If you get to the end of the row and you have not wanted to swear yet, you're probably not done. You probably have one more stitch to do. And so you're going to come right here, and we do want to ideally get under 2 strings. They're not going to look neat and tidy like a V like the other one, but there are 2 strands there, and then there is 1 strand underneath. You don't really want to put your hook in the big giant hole. You do want to try to get it through those 2 strands. And now we're going to work that exactly like every other double crochet. Lay the yarn across, come under the 2 strands, yarn across, under the 2 strands, yarn across, under the last 2 strands. And that will keep your edges nice and neat and tidy. And if you wonder why you need to do that, do you remember at the beginning of the row, we skipped all 3 turning chains and that first stitch? Since we skipped one at the beginning, we need to put that extra one out there on the end. If you don't do that, if you go into this one and you don't go into the last one, your piece is going to start to become a bit of a rhombus. It's going to grow this way and it's going to shrink on the other side. So this will keep your edges nice and neat and tidy. And that's how you work a row of double crochet.